Welcome to Sustainability Now, solutions to shape a world that works. Designed for everyone interested in responsible stewardship of the planet, covering food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and today I'm delighted to introduce you to Maddie Hamann. Maddie is co-founder and director of marketing of PACHA Bread. In a world where the food industry and environmental concerns often clash, PACHA emerges as a beacon, seamlessly blending health-conscious choices with a profound commitment to the planet. Under Maddie's guidance, PACHA not only offers nourishing food, but is also a champion of regenerative agriculture, aiming to transform the food industry into a force for ecological restoration. Buckwheat, the main ingredient in PACHA's recipes, is a cover crop renowned for enhancing soil health. By sourcing from certified regenerative farms in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, PACHA ensures that each loaf contributes to sustainable farming practices. Their commitment extends to packaging as well, which is 100% home compostable, reflecting a holistic approach to environmental stewardship. Join us as we delve into Maddie's vision for PACHA and a future where every meal fosters personal health and planetary well-being. Maddie, it's so good to have you here with us. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
And congratulations on PACHA. I mean, you have taken a very alternative food. I hope it's okay to characterize it that way.
Sure.
And really gotten huge play. You're in Whole Foods, you're in Mom's Market, you have an online business model as well. So you've really hit it out of the park. And I would love to talk about what that journey's been like and a bit about your products and your vision and your journey. So where would you like to start?
Well, we can start with the story of the company if you'd like.
Sure.
I guess maybe my story is a little bit woven in. So, yeah, I come from a background. I'm actually a PhD oceanographer.
Which makes you a natural for the bread business or the food
Yeah,
business.
obviously marketing is the next step. But my entire career journey has been guided by a deeper call to use my talents and skills in service of the planet. And I became an oceanographer because I learned about climate change in high school and college and thought, well, geez, we really must need to know more about this climate change thing so that we can start making some real change. And as I moved through my my graduate degree and learned everything that not everything, not even close to everything that we know about the climate and ocean system, I realized that we know plenty and that the knowledge itself is not really what's keeping us from making change. And so PACHA Bread started as an idea of my husband and co-founder. His name's Adam. We both have been on a healthy food journey. For myself, it was it was tied. So I couldn't really eat gluten. I was noticing that I was feeling bloated and not just kind of icky when I was eating bread. And so I just stopped eating bread. And there were gluten-free options a couple years ago. This would have been like 6 or 7 years ago now. There were options, but everything that was available had like gums or just sugar, or it wasn't organic. None of it was organic. It was like you couldn't really get a good gluten-free bread. And when I met my partner Adam, he had this bread that he shared with me, and I was kind of flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that I could actually eat it, and that it didn't have any of the weird things that I was used to seeing in gluten-free bread. It was made from just buckwheat, sunflower, flax, and seasonings. And he wooed me, we started dating. The bread really drew me in. No, there's other things too. But as our relationship developed, we were making this bread together with our roommates and with some other folks that we from the community, just testing, trying new recipes, trying new things with it. And at a certain point, there were people like asking us, okay, like, can you make the bread for us? Can you make it for our restaurant for Thanksgiving? Can you just bake it every week for me? I really want to have it available. And Adam, who has he's founded several different enterprises in his life. He's a serial entrepreneur. And he had actually founded a company called Boochcraft. Some of you might be familiar with that. It's more prominent on the West Coast, but it's like an alcoholic kombucha that he invented with our brother-in-law. And so he had the experience to say, hey, you know what, if we're going to make this bread, which should be available for everybody, and let's just do it. And at first I wasn't going to be involved. I was finishing my PhD, or so I was finished with my PhD. I was in my first year of my postdoc and planning to, I don't know, do maybe some sort of science communications or something like that. And I realized that the bread had an opportunity to do something much more than just be like a healthy bread and an entrepreneurial opportunity for my husband. It was like, okay, buckwheat is magical. And if you source ingredients from farms that are doing things in a sustainable way, you can actually put carbon into the soil. And so I decided at that point that I was going to jump in and lend my skills in oceanography. No, lend my time and energy to PACHA to really to be working on something that was putting people's money towards making a change. Yeah.
I love it. So I want to talk about for a minute the bread itself, because it is, just for those who are listening, it is not your standard bread.
No.
It has very little relationship to what we would normally call bread. It's very dense, and it's very substantial. I would say that it's bread is a category of its own that we don't necessarily, it is food, but we don't consider it food, like
Yeah,
some
it's like a vehicle.
right,
Real food.
right. Even really good bread
Yeah.
it's a category of its own. I would say that the pacha bread is really food.
Yeah.
It's a loaf. It's more
Right.
of a loaf kind of food than a bread kind of food. At least that's what I would say.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then like for me, I'm not excited about the idea of giving my 2-year-old daughter, like a couple slices of white bread as a snack. But if she eats a couple pieces of pacha bread, I'm like, great. She's gonna have protein, energy, and yeah, and for myself, it really fills you up. You can eat 2 or 3 slices of pacha bread and it's like, okay,
It's a
I'm
meal. Yeah,
8 at 9 a.m. and I'm not going to be hungry again until 1 or 2 o'clock. Like,
that's true.
yeah.
I can attest to that. I had to try it myself because I'm also gluten free, and it's tough finding quality gluten-free products that aren't filled with all kinds of additives, even if they're made from organic flours, which isn't easy to find. It's not necessarily healthful. It's still ultra high processed food.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is very, very simple. You just have a few ingredients,
Yep.
and there's something quite lovely about that. It's just basic and simple. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nourishing.
And nourishing, definitely. Yeah, and we take our base recipe, our like flagship original loaf is just sprouted buckwheat and salt. That's it. Uh,
Wow.
that's all. I mean, and water, but yeah, and because we use the whole groat. Buckwheat. It's confusing because wheat is in the name, but it's not a wheat, and it's actually not even a grain. It's technically a seed of a fruit.
Really?
Yeah, technically buckwheat. Who knew? But we use that whole seed and we actually soak it and sprout it so that it starts to germinate. So the carbohydrates are presented in a slightly more digestible format. Um, and it's like, I was reading somewhere that flour, like it doesn't matter what kind of flour it is, but if you eat foods that are made of flour, they lose a good amount of their nutrition, and they rapidly lose their nutrition as they sit in flour format. Like once they're milled, it's like if you don't cook it right away, you lose like 50 to 70% of the nutrient content from the flour.
Mhm.
So we use the whole groats and we soak them and sprout them and then we blend them up. So there's just like, yeah, we have all the nutrition and all like the whole seed rather than just the flour and like a highly processed version of it. Yeah.
How long do you sprout?
24 hours.
That's it.
Hmm.
And that activates
Really like,
different
it's
nutrients
not,
too, right?
sorry. So
It
what,
activates different nutrients as well, right? When you
it
sprout
can.
something.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing that it does is the soaking itself, it removes phytic acid from the grain. So and phytic acid is what we call an anti-nutrient. It's a molecule that binds to the metals and the other vitamins and nutrients that are in the food, and then you don't digest it. It just passes through your digestive system. So if you get rid of that acid, then the nutrients are actually available for your gut to take them up. So yeah, we make all of it. It's the most digestible nutrients you can get out of the buckwheat.
So you said that buckwheat's a magical thing. What makes buckwheat magical?
Oh my gosh, so many things make buckwheat magical. I mean, so from a health perspective, I mean, it's high and it's a full, you have all your basic essential amino acids in there. It's also really high in magnesium. There's not very many foods that we eat that naturally have magnesium, and many of us are deficient in magnesium. That's a whole another conversation about that, um, but then what for me is really magical about buckwheat is that it is inherently a really amazing crop for regenerative farmers. Um, for those who aren't familiar with regenerative agriculture, essentially what it is a way of farming. It's farming like we used to farm, but it's a way of farming that takes care of the soil primarily. So the idea is to make the soil as healthy as possible so that you don't need any pesticides or chemical fertilizers or any of the synthetics that get put into the industrial agricultural system. And that really, really healthy, rich soil makes really, really healthy food for us to eat. And so buckwheat it's like there's actually a lot of farmers who use buckwheat as they don't harvest it. They use it as a cover crop. So in between crop rotations, when they take out the first season's crop, they plant buckwheat so that it keeps the soil in place and it actually fixes nitrogen. So it helps to fertilize the soil. Most farmers who are using buckwheat till it back into the soil before it's actually gone to the flowering and fruiting stage where you would get the buckwheat growth. But it, there's plenty of people that are using it. And for farmers, allowing that buckwheat to go to seed and harvesting it and having a place that they can sell that buckwheat, it's like, it just gives them an additional revenue stream from a field. They don't have to change anything. They can still do their first and second crops, and they get an additional crop of buckwheat there in the center. Yeah, it's magical. It's like a win crop. It's great.
And so let's talk about the certified regenerative farms and how you hooked up with it. What kind of arrangements do you have with your farmers? How did you find them? What kind of arrangements do you have?
Yeah, totally. So there's gosh, how did we find our farmers? So there's another brand. They're called Lil Bucks. They make like a sprouted buckwheat granola and some granola snacks and toppers. They're also awesome. And we were talking with them about trying to source regenerative buckwheat. And Emily, the founder of Little Bucks, in her research, she had come across a farmer named John Strophis who owns some farmland in Minnesota, and he also owns like I guess maybe you would call it a conglomerate, where he helps farmers to sell the food that comes off of their fields.
Like a
And
broker.
yeah, like a broker. Maybe you would call him an ingredient broker. I probably should know what he is, but I'm not sure what he titles himself. But he's also a farmer. He's a farmer himself, and he's a generational farmer. And he learned about regenerative agriculture, I don't know, 10 maybe years ago. And as soon as he heard about it, he was like, well, wait, what is this? Like, everybody should be doing this. And he's on a personal mission to transition the world into regenerative methods because it just makes sense. I think I mentioned it briefly before, but like the point is to make the soil healthy so that you don't have to use chemicals at all, ideally to have the same crop yield or maybe slightly lower, but farmers don't have to buy pesticides and fertilizers. And like I mean, so
Well,
many, there's like handcuffed to these companies that are selling them these products.
that's true. And it actually goes beyond soil health because it goes into the water table.
Yeah.
And all the chemicals that are used on the plants are polluting the water table, and there's all kinds of runoff as the soil dies, as the microbes in the soil die. And through regenerative agriculture, what you're doing is you're feeding the microbiome. It then is able to retain moisture better. You need less irrigation. It allows the water to then, instead of runoff, to sink into the water table, and that impacts climate.
Yeah.
It's just a magnificent cycle that if we can correct it in a very simple way through regenerative agriculture, for example,
Yeah.
that it has a massive trickle-down effect.
Huge. Yeah. And that was one of the other things that I think that I mentioned briefly, but when you are nourishing your soil, like we don't really realize, or I didn't really realize before I learned about regenerative agriculture and soil health, just how much carbon lives in the soil if the soil is healthy. If you have, you know, like a several foot layer of soil, which has living biomass in it, that all these carbon-based life forms, and you spread that over the entire earth, you can actually like you can not just counteract our emissions, you can actually start drawing down carbon at a rate that is more than we are emitting it into the atmosphere.
The thing I have a big thing about the whole carbon conversation, because we talk about the objective is to draw down carbon. But the thing is that when what the reason we want to draw down carbon is to mitigate temperature change, right?
Right.
But if we nurture the soil and the water table and allow for the cycle of the water to move into the soil and move back into the atmosphere, what happens is that we create a change in temperature.
Right.
So the whole idea of drawing down carbon, that's not the point. The point
Yeah.
is to be looking at how we can heal the whole system so that it regulates better.
Totally.
That's the intention. And so drawing down carbon is one pathway to that, but
Totally.
it's not the ultimate thing,
I
right?
totally agree with you. And I love that, well, because carbon is like the thing that everyone is, you know, taxing and trying to write legislation about. It's really nice to have this system, this regenerative agriculture system, where it's like, really, this is a holistic approach. Like, we're not just
100%.
focused on carbon here. Like, that's not even close to the only thing we're measuring. And you can go to your representative and be like, hey, if you want to reduce carbon emissions, check it out, regenerative agriculture. Like,
Well, and another aspect of this whole um credit system, I just heard this recently, and I was surprised that I hadn't heard of it before, is biodiversity credits, which
oh,
which work in conjunction sort of with carbon credits. It's not just drawing down carbon, but drawing down carbon and recognizing the biodiversity. The point is, biodiversity is a health indicator,
yeah,
and if we're just drawing down carbon, it's not achieving what we are looking to achieve if we don't have the biodiversity.
totally.
So it's taking this is such an interesting conversation because it's really taking a leap from the Cartesian mechanistic model and going into a systems model.
Right.
And regenerative agriculture is a systems-based solution, whereas carbon drawdown just for carbon measurement's sake is a mechanistic view, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So you found these farmers. Do you have a direct relationship with them, or are you dealing with them through the broker? How does that work?
Yeah, John is yeah, we have a direct relationship with John, and he has grown buckwheat for us. He didn't grow buckwheat for us last year, but I think he's going to again this year. So he is a farmer that we have the direct relationship, but he's the one who manages the relationship with the other farmers that we have growing our buckwheat. And it's actually like brilliant because you know, it is one thing for a brand like PACHA to go out and to, you know, reach out to a farmer and say, hey, trust me, we've tried. Hey, we'd like for you to grow buckwheat and we'd love for you to get this regenerative certification, and it's going to help you and it's going to help the planet, and there's no reason you shouldn't do it. Like, what do you think? And they're like, what do you know about farming?
Right, right.
So the fact that we have John out there as kind of our spokesperson to the farmers has made a huge impact. He can just go firsthand say, hey, like, I'm growing buckwheat for this company. They're paying me a good rate for it. I'm cutting out my price tag on my I mean, he actually was doing a lot of organic farming before, but even cutting out some of the organic inputs that he was using in the system, he can just attest to the viability of it and that it will work and that it will be good for them. And yeah, it's can be hard to change people's minds when they've been doing something for one way for such a long time. Um, yeah, it's good for them to see a peer who has done it and that it's working.
You know, it reminds me of what you were saying in the beginning of our conversation from oceanography, to realize that we know a lot already. It's not a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of will.
Yeah.
And maybe a bit of a lack of conversation, a lack of that story that is going to allow people to find viable alternatives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, lack of story, definitely lack of story, or maybe not so much lack of story as hearing of other stories.
Right.
Right. And having the, having the systems in place that we have in place and the subsidies that we have in place already, right? Like there's an incredible amount of money that comes from the government to subsidize monocropped corn, soybeans, wheat, like
That have been engineered.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're mounting a revolution,
Yes, indeed.
which is awesome. And I'm wondering if you found, in addition to the farmers, if you've found compatriots that you're working with together with this vision for sustainable food, sustainable regenerative agriculture, etc.
Yeah, definitely. There are two organizations that we're a part of. One is called the One Step Closer Collaborative. So brands like Dr. Bronner's and Numi Tea and traditional medicinals and I like, I can't forget
What was the second one you said?
um Numi Tea, Numi, Numi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just, there are brands that are doing things better and they're values-based brands. So instead of having just the single bottom line of how much profit are we generating, there's, how much profit and also how much good are we doing and how much plastic are we reducing and how much carbon are we drawing down or whatever the metrics are, but just like how are we making a positive impact on the environment. So we're a part of that collaborative. Again, that's the One Step Closer collaborative. Um,
What's their website?
um, I think it's onestepcloser.org. We can put it in the show
Okay.
notes, so I'll make sure.
Okay, great.
And, and so we're a part of what they call their Rising Stars chapter. So they have a group of super small businesses, less than 10 million a year, that we all get together and we talk about the, the issues that we're running into as business owners. And yeah, just an incredible amount of support from that network, really just in like, okay, we're a really small fish when you like compared to some of the other companies that are out there. I was watching some football over the weekend with my family and just like, I don't know if Pacha's ever going to have as much money as the companies that run these commercials during, college football games. Like these are big companies. But just having the support of those companies to navigate the waters of owning a small business, a startup, that has been incredible. And also just, really inspiring to see what companies are doing in the face of a lot of challenges. They are still pushing forward and like leading the way in compostable packaging and like increasing organic and regenerative acreage and like they're just really inspirational companies. And then we're also part of a newer collaborative that's called the Regen Brands Coalition. And that was formed this year. And that coalition has the, is only regenerative focused brands, and the entire purpose of its existence is to forward the regenerative movement. So we're really thinking about like, okay, as a single brand, we have the ability maybe to impact the people who buy our product, but what happens when we get 40 brands together? Like, what kind of collective power can we, 1 + 1 = 3? What can we do with all of our energy put into certain projects? So,
That's
yeah,
super exciting.
yeah, it's very exciting. It's really great that it's not just PACHA out there. That
Yeah,
would
for sure. Right?
But
There's power in numbers.
yeah,
What comes to mind is packaging. You mentioned the P word for the plastic word.
yeah.
And and the bags that well, Pacha has like a cardboard, and then what I would have thought was a plastic bag. And I have to say that one of the things that really struck me is, you know how you have on when you twist a bag, the little plastic thing that holds that bag closed.
Yeah,
Yours is cardboard. So
yeah.
I just, I love that. I mean, the little things, like, why would you want it to be anything but?
Yeah.
But I know that there are issues around compostable packaging, and particularly home compostable packaging. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the packaging element, because I'm guessing that was a hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, home compostable packaging. There's a few
That's
things.
gonna hold up on the shelf in the
Yeah,
freezer over time. So
yeah,
yeah.
right. I mean, so we're lucky, in that our product is in the frozen department. We don't, since we're not like a shelf stable product, we don't need to have, what they call, like, we don't need to have like a barrier layer is what they call it, that prevents moisture from getting to our product. It's like the level of barrier that's required for a frozen bread product that's going to be sold within a few months of being baked is, it's not as, the requirements are not as intense. So the thing that's a barrier for most companies, like most frozen products, is that it's just too expensive, because it's being home compostable packaging is being made on such a small level right now that you just can't. Companies are just like, well, we're using this material, this plastic material. It costs us 2 cents per unit to package our product, versus, let's say, 18 cents per unit to go to for a home compostable version of it. So like a lot of businesses, they've already built their business model. They've already been doing things the way they've been doing it. And to make that shift and to eat 16 cents a unit would be a huge impact on their profitability, just everything about their business model. For Pacha, we've been doing it from the beginning. So it's built into the DNA of our company, and
It's not an inexpensive product.
no,
It's a very dear product for a loaf of bread, and it is meals. I mean,
yes,
I think it's really interesting because it's all frame of reference, right? If we think of a loaf of bread and we think about what we're paying for a loaf of bread, I don't even know what a loaf of white bread goes for these days. I have no idea. It's
very
$4,
large range, depends
$3.
on quality. I mean, if you're looking for like a good organic sourdough, you can pay $6, $7, for like a loaf of I mean, especially if you want to get like, you know, the nice milled, like freshly milled, or like the
Right, right,
heirloom
right. But
flour.
let's make an extreme comparison, like the white
Yeah,
bread. that you would
Yeah.
buy. I don't even know what it goes for these
I think
days.
these days it's around $2 is for like a
Okay.
loaf of like Wonder Bread.
And PACHA Bread's like $10.
Yeah.
So it's not inexpensive. And when you think about it, instead of thinking about it as bread, if you think about it as meals,
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game. Then it's
Yeah.
really, really um inexpensive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's all about the story.
Yeah. Totally.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, so you built the packaging in from the beginning.
Yeah.
And when you talk about home compostable, just curious, do you know anything about like what kind of inks they're using to print the plastic? I don't know
Yeah.
what to call it. It's not plastic. What is it?
It's a bio, I mean, technically it is a
A
plastic,
bioplastic.
bioplastic. So it's
Okay.
instead of being made from petroleum, it's made from potato starch, our current
Okay.
potato starch.
Okay,
Um,
I've known of some that were made of cornstarch, and
mhm.
what I know is that lots and lots and lots of corn is engineered, and
Right,
so I'm wondering, are the potatoes organic or like that they're making the starch? Do we know that
right.
depth?
No, we don't know that depth. We don't know that depth, and probably not.
Yeah,
I would guess.
probably not.
But potatoes, yeah, potatoes. This is a good piece for me to think about actually. But the potatoes, one good thing about potatoes is that they often require fewer chemical inputs. However, they there's like no way to get around tilling with potatoes.
And
So
by the way, for those who aren't familiar with regenerative farming, it's pretty much no till.
it is and it isn't. There are regenerative farmers who do use till methods, but there's definitely a school of thinking around regenerative farming that's like basically what we just need to stop tilling. Like
Right,
whenever and however we can, we should not be tilling the soil. Because every time you do that, you expose, I mean, you kill everything. You ruin this, if you think about the soil as like, it's kind of like there's like a tree underneath the ground that you have all these creatures living in. If you were just to like slash off a bunch of branches of the tree, everything loses its home. Like this is the parallel, right? So
right.
tilling the soil rips up all the roots, breaks up the mycelium, all the microbes get flattened and takes a while to rebuild. So if you don't do that, it's a better way to nourish the ecosystem. So
At the very least, it's traumatizing that whole ecosystem.
yeah. But yeah, potato farming as at least as far as my knowledge goes right now, nobody's figured out how to do no-till potatoes.
Mm. You
Um,
know, it's interesting in these kinds of questions. It's like, well, how far down the line do you follow that? How far down the hole do you follow the
yeah.
rabbit? You
Yeah.
know?
And also like, from our perspective, it's like, well, do we want to use a renewable potato resource, or do we want to use like a non-renewable petrochemical source that then turns into a piece of plastic that will be in the environment for 500 years?
Right,
For me, that's an obvious choice.
right. It's incremental change.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And we're just trying to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really
So
that's like the one step closer collaborative. That's their whole goal, is like we just need to keep making progress. Like let's just make the changes we can
yeah.
and commit to making more.
So say more about how the packaging thing came about, how you found it and how you build in the price.
Yeah. Yeah, it's built in the price. I mean, again, so my co-founder Adam and I, we are the reason we started the company is because we want to have a positive impact on people's health and on the health of the planet. That's our mission. So we personally knew that we would be pursuing compostable packaging. There's several different companies that are out there right now.
Not many, right?
It depends on what specifically you're looking for. Like, yeah, there's not that many companies that are making a plastic bread bag, a compostable biofilm plastic bread bag, right? Lots of companies that make plastic bread bags don't, yes. But yeah, we found our suppliers through Expo West, and then also just online research, like looking for making cold calls, looking up compostable packaging, and then calling the companies and be like, hey, so like, tell me about this. How do you make it? Where do you make it? Is it really do you have a certification? Like, yeah. And it is interesting too, to see how many companies there are that like, they'll say that it's compostable, but then really, really it's like compostable only in this very specific facility. There's only 2 of them in the entire country. It's not actually compostable when you think about it that way. And I mean, I'll say too that the compostable packaging is a tough one for me also, because I know that most people aren't composting our package,
Right.
right? Like,
I have a service that picks up my compost. They won't take home compostable products in the compost.
yeah. Yeah. And we compost our bags in our home compost. They do break down, but they take longer, and they have to have like, you have to know what you're doing with your compost. You have to know how to get the temperature up pretty good.
Yeah.
And yeah, some people just frankly don't even generate enough compost to make an active compost pile. Like,
Right.
my dad is an avid gardener, and he's always like, oh my God, I'm so jealous of all the food scraps you guys make over at your, community that you live in.
So, that actually brings up another question, because what I'm probing for is your business.
Yeah,
Like, what's your business look like? How are you using business for good? Essentially,
yeah,
that's really what we're talking about.
yeah.
And so, in any business, there's waste, and particularly in food business, there's waste, and
Mhm.
you're sprouting, so I imagine there's a lot of water uh, that you're using, and I'm wondering how far, and again, down that rabbit hole, not anything is, incremental, but where
Right.
are you in relation to the waste management, the water management, all of that, the lighting, the electricity, like how crazy have you gone with this whole thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot that we could still be doing on the production side of things. We, you kind of have to, you either have to own or have the master lease on your building in order to really like change fundamentally the electrical system. Like, we would love to install solar, but there's a chance that we will not even be in this facility in 3 years because our lease will end. Um, and like, we have started conversations around what it will look like when we build our new facility, to utilize some government grants and build solar in, reduce our natural gas consumption for our ovens, like electric ovens, solar panels, that kind of thing. But yeah, we are somewhat, like, again, handcuffed by the existing system, because we're not big enough to change the existing system for ourselves in our current facility. Yeah. But I will also say, the like a lot of most of the water usage in industry comes from like, it's actually coolant water. and we don't use water for coolant or anything like that. Our water usage is fairly minimal. That wouldn't be the place I would start to try and make the biggest impact on
Where would you start?
I would start with the electrical and trying to eliminate the natural gas.
How about waste?
Well, I mean, there is definitely waste. There's, like shrink wrap around pallets. And one thing that really, I wish that there were a way to recycle the super sacks, there's like these 2,000-gallon tote bags that our grain comes in, and it's made of this like woven plastic fiber. And
Oh,
there aren't good recycling programs for those. Like they don't reuse them, and there's not really a great way to recycle them. So that's one area that I would love to figure that out. But we try to purchase things that have paper packaging as much as possible. And a lot of anything from our facility that gets wasted, like the little ends of the bread that get cut off in the slicer, and damaged packaging, anything like that. We do participate in a municipal composting program. So we send all that stuff to an industrial composting facility. And so that offsets a lot of our waste. I think outside of our facility, we have like one dumpster that's compost, one dumpster that is recycling, and then like a couple cans that are trash.
that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Although the recycling thing, I'm like, I don't trust you guys. I don't think it's being recycled.
No, I'm with you there, actually.
Yeah.
It's a feel-good activity.
Yeah, I would agree.
Assuage our guilt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You also have a pretty interesting business model. So you are in a lot of retail outlets, which is
Mhm.
pretty impressive, to be on the shelf in Whole Foods and Mom's Markets. And I imagine there are a number of other markets
Yeah.
where you're placed. And you have a direct sale
Mhm.
model. So could you just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. Well, so first I'll say, I don't think I mentioned that we opened our doors in April of 2020 is when we got into our first test kitchen. So like right when COVID was hitting, we started. Um, so our original business plan was to sell into grocery, and it's not like frozen bread isn't really an ideal e-commerce product. Most people aren't like, I'm gonna go online to buy my bread. Um, and during COVID, there was it was just weird times, and a lot of the buyers who decide what products are going onto the shelves at the grocery store, it was just like a freeze. Like there was no change. They were just like, we're gonna sell what we've got, and we'll wait until people are back in the store to try and like change anything up. So we couldn't sell the bread into any grocery store. And so it was a little bit like we need to figure out how to make our business do something. And so we started selling our bread online. Turns out it's actually a pretty good idea, because there's a lot of people who don't really have there's a lot of people who have like a really niche need, right? Like a lot of people who just can't eat any gluten-free, like they can't eat any bread because they can't eat gluten, and they can't eat eggs, and they can't eat nuts, and they can't eat the binders that are in and they're just like, I just can't eat any of it. Those people don't always live within the vicinity of a health food store or one of the stores where we are starting to sell our bread. So right now, about 40 or 45% of our business is actually through our online store.
Wow.
Yeah. And
How do you how do you ensure that it arrives frozen?
it actually doesn't arrive frozen. We send it 2-day shipping, and it comes in an insulated box. So it starts frozen, and then it arrives at your door and it's thawed, and we say just to put it back in your fridge, or your fridge if you're going to eat it, freezer if you're going to store it, and then but it can handle being thawed and then frozen again. And that's yeah, we don't do ice packs or anything. That was one thing that we were like, for a second, we were like, what if we do like dry ice or ice packs? And it's just looking at all of the waste of shipping with ice packs. It was like, no, I can't do it. We'll just only ship to California if that's what we have to do. Like, but it turns out that it works to ship it 2 day.
Great. What would you say is the biggest hurdle that you all had to overcome outside of COVID?
Yeah, and I'll say it was better to start during COVID than to be like a year old and then have COVID hit.
For sure.
Definitely. But I would say our biggest hurdle, our biggest hurdle has been probably funding.
That was going to be my next question
Yeah.
is how did you fund the business? So perfect.
Yeah, it's probably been funding. Again, so like a lot of things have shifted in the last 5 years, 4 years. One of those things being that a lot of the investment, like the capital that was being funneled into food ventures and startups, was just like that capital is dried up. So,
Are you talking about grants or individual investors or what?
investment capital, venture capital funding in particular is very hard to find right now. And also just, I think during COVID, people were a little bit more like cash assets were more valuable to people. It was a very uncertain time. People wanted gold, people wanted money in the bank, rather than being invested in stocks or companies or things that was just like, well, how can you guarantee what's going to happen with this business, because you don't even know what the landscape is going to be in 30 days. Like everything's changing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just, we have been raising money since we started. We have had an open fundraising round. We are actually about to close our for the first time, we're closing a round, and we're, going to take a couple months before we open another one.
And so I guess the other questions I have are, you said you started selling online. How did you reach an audience and how do you find your investors? Are you doing accredited investors only, or are you doing something like Indiegogo or Kickstarter?
Yeah. So it's a blend. We do have accredited investors, and we are taking larger investments from accredited investors, but we also, we started a crowdfunding campaign. So we've actually done 2 now, one in 2023 through WeFunder. And then actually, as on the date of recording this podcast today, we're closing our second round. So by the time you hear this, it will no longer be available. But we've funded $1.3 million through small investments of as small as $200 from primarily actually from our customers, and customers, friends, some people who just found us through the WeFunder platform. But yeah, thousands of people have contributed to funding this venture and just believing in what we're doing, which is really cool.
So what is the WeFunder platform? That I'm not familiar with. I know about Indiegogo and Kickstarter, but
yeah, it's it's similar. Adam would be better at answering the questions about how they differ, but it's a crowdfunding platform that enables they specialize basically in doing the paperwork that enables people to invest into companies with equity. So when people are investing in PACHA through WeFunder, they're actually purchasing a piece of the company that will grow in value as the company grows. And then the way that you see a return on it, some of the what is the one that's, I forget what it's called, but you buy the thing in advance, right? It's not like that. It's you're not making a pre-purchase of bread or anything like that. You are literally buying a piece of the
The
PACHA
company,
company,
like a stock,
like a stock,
like like shares.
yes, it's like stock, but in a privately held company. Yeah. So it's
Wow.
pretty cool. And I mean, WeFunder, it's doing amazing things and enabling founders who would have had no way of getting the capital that they have been able to collect from a crowd funding outlet. Like there's, yeah, it's the kinds of things that people are able to fund through these methods are, it's amazing. Yeah.
I'm
It's
gonna
a
check
great
it out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and you can
And
find, I mean, you can go on to WeFunder and search for like companies that only have sustainable missions, and like you can invest all your money into green
wow,
energy. And like it's just like
that's exciting.
it's very cool. Yeah.
Very cool. You just gave me a great idea. I appreciate that. I'm gonna go check them out.
Yeah.
And I guess the last question that I have for the moment is, how did you find customers when your whole existence was online from scratch? So
Yep.
did you do that?
Um, you know, good old Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of our customers we've run ads on Meta. Yeah. And I don't love being on there myself personally. I don't love having to have an Instagram, and I have to have one to like, because we run ads on there. But I will say they are very good at finding the people that need what it is you're selling. So I mean, we grew our email list from my personal email list of a few hundred people to now I think we have 70 or 80,000 people that
Wow,
subscribe to receive information about PACHA Bread. It's like, okay,
that's
that's
pretty
pretty
awesome.
cool.
What is Pacha's website?
The website is pacha.com.
PACHA.
PACHA. Yeah.
What, Maddie, should I have asked you that I didn't ask?
Well, the only thing that I can think of is that I know we're going to be releasing this in February, and around the time that we release this podcast, we are actually going to be releasing a new product, like a whole new product, not just a new flavor of bread, which is another thing. If you get our emails, if you sign up to our email list, we release like special flavors of bread throughout the year. So you won't be able to find them in grocery stores, but like super yummy, like pumpkin spice and carrot
Yeah.
cake.
Now, even these are foundationally made with buckwheat.
Yes. Yeah. They're all primarily buckwheat, and then they have the additional flavorings. We try to like source local blueberries or good quality organic ingredients for those special loaves. But then in February, we are releasing a whole new product line. It's going to be a sourdough buckwheat wrap or a tortilla, like
Oh, wow, that would be amazing. Sign
yeah,
me up for that.
they're really, really good. One of the really cool innovations that we have done for those is so like I was talking about, we use the buckwheat seed. And kind of like a sunflower seed, a sunflower seed has that hull that's very fibrous. So does the buckwheat seed. It has like a hull. And our farmer, they can be used for things, they make meditation cushions with them. They can be used for helping in a juicing process and stuff. But our farmer has a bunch of these like regeneratively grown buckwheat hulls that he's wants to sell. And so now we're making a whole grain version of the tortilla, and it's really good. I don't know how to explain it, but like the texture is just like it gives you this mouth feel that makes it really easy to bite through the tortilla, but the tortilla holds together really well, and it gives it this cool, like the hull is black, So it gives it this cool, like almost purple color.
Wow.
And it's beautiful, and it's a way to help to help utilize part of our waste stream, right? Like
How
what
about the nutritional value of the whole dough?
it has a lot of fiber. So that's its primary function is it's very fibrous, which is good for a lot of people. I probably don't need that much more fiber, but it tastes good, so I'm down.
That's pretty exciting. So, that's happening right around the time of our release, which is also
Yeah.
really exciting. We're talking about February of 2025.
Yep.
And is there anything else maybe I should have asked?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, so you can find PACHA Bread. We've mentioned that you can find it at Whole Foods nationwide. It's in the frozen section. So if you're looking around all the shelf stable bread, you're in the wrong place, go to the freezer. And we're also in Mom's markets. We're in many, but not all of the natural grocery stores. We are going to be in HEB, of select stores in HEB. Yeah, Erewhon, Mother's Markets, Gelson's, and various small independent grocers throughout the country. So if you want PACHA Bread at your local natural grocery store, you can go in and just tell them that you want to have PACHA Bread on the shelves. And actually that goes a really long way with the people who choose what's on the shelves of your grocery stores. You tell them what you want. Sometimes they listen. So
That's great. And how can people reach you, Maddie?
So if you'd like to connect with PACHA, you can send an email to info@livepacha.com. If you want to speak to me directly, just let them know that you listen to this podcast and they will forward it to me and I'll get in touch.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you for your vision and really for your deep commitment to making business make a difference, and for your commitment to the planet and people's health, all of us together. So much gratitude for your vision.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for the platform. Yeah.
And your hard work, by the way. So also thank you to everyone who's listening. We so appreciate you and your support, and thank you for supporting us on Patreon. We are at sustainabilitynow.global, and we will include links that relevant to this podcast in the show notes. And I also want to say thank you to my partner in crime here at Sustainability Now, Scott Billy, who is also our producer. And that's it for today. So live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now. Visit sustainabilitynow.global to find resources related to today's program. While you're there, pledge your support by making a contribution to help us shape a world that works. And remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.